Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
All right, everyone. I'm so excited to have one of my new friends that is a fellow podcaster and social media queen on chronic stress and athletes and performance and nutrition. And we're going to talk to Connie today from your Spokane, Washington, right?
Yeah, I'm actually Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Coeur d'Alene.
So we're home. Yeah, we're home of the Iron Man here. And so it's a pleasure to be joining you today.
Thank you so much. We did a podcast for your show and you were sharing your story a little bit. It's like, oh my gosh, you'd be great on the Low Carb Athlete podcast. So I wanted you to come on to you have such an inspirational story and why. And I think it's similar to mine, but different. And I think, it's like, why do we podcast? Because it's kind of a free task to do. And why do you do what you do? So let's talk about your story to start with, and we'll dive in from there and just go with it.
Well, do you want the sweet and condensed version or because there's a lot to it, and it's just like all of us, right? Where our mess kind of becomes our message. And so with that being said, the original reason I dove into nutrition and fitness is I've always been an athlete, but I was a pretty thick athlete. And I always wanted to look like these other athletic girls, and I never did. Right. And I didn't ever understand why. But anyways, into my adult life, my son actually has ADHD, and we did a switch on our diet to kind of help him with that. And when I saw the changes that made in our whole family, that sent me down this crazy nutritional rabbit hole to kind of condense it all. And in the midst of that rabbit hole, I lost a ton of weight all of a sudden. My brain fog was gone. I no longer had fatigue. I felt like $1 million. And at that point, I had lost like 50 pounds, and I decided I needed to start working out. So I started working out, and it was just a basic routine in the morning, right? It was like, get up, do 3 sets of 10 squats and 3 sets of 10 push-ups and do a little run here and there. And that was about it. Right. And then that slowly grew until it was like, okay, I think I need to add to this. So I started buying kettlebells and dumbbells. And the next thing you know, I'm emptying out my whole office, and I have a bench press, and I have all this stuff, and I have to start splitting my days up into like upper body and lower body. And then next thing you know, you start feeling that muscle grow. And from the very first week or so of starting to train, I could feel my quads like firming up and things like that. So I was really addicted to it. And I continued to train in it. And finally I was getting super fit, and I had always had a bodybuilding show on my checklist of things to do. And I never knew how I would attain it. And I was very close at this point. So I started looking into coaches, and the rest is history. I stepped on the bodybuilding stage. But that's not the end of my message and my journey here, right? Because even though I had started to dive into fitness and get really crazy about understanding all of these things with nutrition and fitness and all of it, I'm also a very type A athlete. And I'm one of these people that jumps into things at 150%, goes full bore, pedal to the metal. I don't realize it's like a high school teenager, they're driving as fast as they can everywhere. They don't realize that there's dangers on that windy road, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was going pedal to the metal, and I ended up having a similar story to you, where I went so hard that I burnt myself up. And nobody could tell me what was wrong with me, right? But within a month and a half of my very last bodybuilding show that I did, I gained about 40 pounds, and I felt absolutely horrible. And the signs were there before the end of the bodybuilding show ever even happened. But my coach just kept telling me it was normal and encouraging me to keep going. And I had no plan of quitting. And I had these blinders on to where I ignored all of the outside messages that my body was giving me. And I only tuned it out. It was like, shut up, body. You're going to listen to what I'm doing. I'm the boss. And so it really put me down a horrible road. So I went from this place of where I had reclaimed my health, and I was vibrant and vigorous and doing doing so well to going down this road of complete disrepair in a matter of years. And it was all because I pushed myself way too hard and my body basically gave up on me. So there was a lot of big ramifications. I ended up going to a functional medicine doctor because I'd gone to so many other regular doctors and they would run my blood work and they're like, you're fine. And I'm like, listen, no, I'm not fine. I'm gaining all this weight. I'm eating in a caloric deficit. I exercise like crazy. There's no way that this should be happening to me. Also, crazy things were happening to me, like extreme exhaustion. Like I can't even tell you how exhausted I was. Some days I was so tired, I couldn't even walk out of my work to take the garbage out to the garbage can, or walking to my truck seemed like this crazy task. I would get numbness in my limbs, especially my face. And I couldn't sleep at night though. So you think, okay, you're exhausted, right? You should be able to just crash. I couldn't sleep. I had terrible sleep apnea. I'm a young, vibrant, person. I shouldn't be having these problems yet. I'm waking my husband up, snoring. So terrible sleep apnea. My blood sugar was extremely dysregulated, and all of these things were just piling up, right? And so I'm collectively taking in the information, and I finally decided that I was going to go to a functional medicine doctor because maybe they could help me. And I was right. She ran all the correct labs and stuff and actually diagnosed me with Hashimoto's autoimmune disease. And at that point, my blood work was horrible. She's like, I don't even know what your regular doctor was running on you because your blood work is terrible. And so basically my hormones were all in the garbage can along with my thyroid. And so I have basically been working for the last 18 months towards getting my health back after I had my pedal to the metal for too long and I crashed.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the same story, but mine was 8 years. So it's so common, and that's what my purpose is now and passion, I feel like, is to help people, same thing, avoid that burnout and break down your body systems, because 8 years later, I'm just figuring out. So it is an ongoing journey that you start, but you have to learn N=1. And if you have the tendency to push the limit, you have to always slow down and back up a bit, because doing too much or too little, just find that right balance of everything and not take everything to extreme, because then we keep digging ourselves back in that hole. So it's always just filling the void and doing something else. It's like, all right, I stopped doing bodybuilding, or stopped doing Ironmans, or stopped running my own business, owning a studio as I did. And then it's like, all right, take that time and I start doing something else. So it's just, you're not really dealing with the actual why. We just keep doing something different because we are addicted to busyness and being overachievers, that often we feel lazy and, unmotivated and kind of pathetic if we don't do something all the time, right? So we just have that continuous drive and so ambitious that it gets us in trouble. So we always have to reel back in and get grounded and take a moment to reset and reboot the whole person before we start to try something new. And I think it gets that cycle of trial and error for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And then when you're dealing with something like this, where there's a million different names for it, adrenal fatigue, HPA Axis dysfunction, just to name a few, when you're dealing with an animal like this, it doesn't just get better overnight, right? So you have to give your body a lot of patience, which us type A people have a hard time doing, because we want to just go, okay, what's next? But that's something that I've been trying to convey to everyone around me and my own clients and on my podcast everywhere is you can go to an extreme, but that extreme is only going to reward you back possibly with other extreme circumstances, right? So the better we can do with the less is more, basically, is what I try to say in a nutshell.
Said that today to someone. They said,
yeah.
So that's one of my favorite mantras, less is more. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And in the athletics world, it's kind of this misnomer, right? That you need to go out and you need to crush every single day, and you need to go as hard as you can, harder than the next person next to you, because that's what's going to get you the win. That's what's going to get you the attention. And that's another problem, right? Is it's really hard to let go of our ego that we've been working on for all this time and just be like, yeah, I may not be the best. I might be the person in the back of the pack. I might not be, the person that is setting the best times, or that person that's getting the local legends on Strava, or whatever it is that we're doing. But we have to realize that we have to rein it in, and less is more. And we're going to get a whole lot further in the long run if we are taking our time and, listening to our body is the very number one thing.
So how do you listen to your body? What have you learned since just been doing this for 18 months? You're newbie at it. So what have you learned? I
can't say that I've fully found my balance in this. And if I was to say that, I would be completely lying. Right. So there's that. But I think, like this morning is a prime example of that. I have been putting in quite a few training hours. I have big plans for my upcoming summer, and I'm already tackling them because that's part of my personality, and I try to work on that. But like I woke up with that indicative scratchy throat that you get, when you've been pushing it just a little bit too hard. And I was like, oh, red flag. Okay. You've got to back that off. So, I've taken the last couple days. I haven't done any training, doing yoga, things that are low impact, so you're still getting a benefit of doing something, but you're not going out and crushing some cardio workout or some strength training, which is really hard, right? Because we're programmed to think that if we miss this day, then we're going to lose our gains, or we're going to lose our progress. But it's kind of been this check and balance of understanding for me, which has been really difficult because when I do miss days, it's like, okay, well, I understand that I'm missing this day because my body is telling me no, and I've got to slow it down, and I'm still refining all of this. So I do better, which this is kind of weird, which you actually could probably weigh in on this a lot because I've heard you talk about it, but I do actually feel better when I'm doing less strength training and more like just cycling, not running or doing anything crazy, but just cycling. And I attribute that to the fact that when I wake up in the morning, I'm out with the sun and I'm out in the daylight. And I think that really helps me out a lot. And it's low impact. So I'm not out jarring myself, not doing any crazy HIIT intervals or anything like that. So I do well when I'm doing just regular cycling. But what I've noticed with my adrenal stuff is that when I lift weights heavy and I go at it really hard is when I really see myself go into the tank.
That's backwards. I would think it'd be the other way around, that because lifting weights is what we need to do more of, and endurance exercise increases your cortisol, stress hormone, and we're not supposed to go over about 45 minutes and keep the heart rate low.
And that's what I always thought. And I was like, don't do cardio. I'm just going to lift. And I actually tried that for the first probably solid 8 to 9 months. Wasn't doing a lot of cardio, was just lifting shorter sessions, but heavy. And I just don't recover from it. And I don't do well with it. The minute I do a nice heavy leg day, my heart rate variability will be down in the toilet. And I just feel horrible. So I actually removed my cardio, or my strength training down to like 3 to 4 times a week tops.
And that's then a lot. That was down. You were doing it more than that?
Oh yeah.
So maybe 3 times a week is plenty.
Yeah. So, and then only 1 leg day a week, because leg days are really the days that are really hard on me. So 1 leg day a week. And then I moved my strength training down to only 3 or 4 days a week. So, and shorter sessions, right? So no longer was I spending an hour and a half to 2 hours in the gym. I was getting in and out in the matter of like 30 minutes, 40 minutes tops. So
okay, that sounds better. And are you doing total body workouts, or are you still doing a bodybuilding type of workout? Like you mentioned,
I still do
leg day and
I still do body part splits. Yeah.
Well, that would, if you're trying to see, I think, not giving coaching advice, but just if that was me, and everyone's unique, I would have to pick and choose, like, doing less cardio and doing my strength training every other day, or leave 2 days in between things and rotate them around. That doing the weightlifting is more anabolic, right? Building your muscles, versus cardio is catabolic, but balancing that out. So anything too much is going to be toxic, or too much stress, right? And anything too little. So maybe not lifting 6 to 4 days, to 7 days a week. And on top of that, are you doing cardio as well?
Yeah, but the thing is like so on the days that I'm not strength training, I always take a full rest day no matter what. But on the days that I am not strength training, I either do a cardio workout, but the days that I'm strength training, I'll still do something low impact, like ride my bike to work, something where I'm not getting my heart rate crazy, but I'm being active. And so I'm still putting in miles, but I'm not, going crazy and, trying to do sprints or keep my heart rate at a certain zone. I honestly don't even on those days track what I'm doing. I just go out and do it.
Well, I think that's what you learn too, is that you stop being addicted to your stats and your Garmin watch and just go for a bike ride, just to like go to the grocery store, go to work, that it's just easy. You're not trying to keep your heart rate at 130 and do a certain pace or power or anything. Just forget all the info and just go for enjoyment and time outdoors and nature. And I think when you're an athlete and you're driven, ambitious, high performing individual, we tend to make everything competitive, and you compete with yourself and you're trying to be certain pace and always push yourself. And, I did that for so long. Now I'm like, screw it. I'm not going to be able to do it. Just go for a walk and, don't cry about it. Just get over it, that's what your body needs today. Or, don't worry about stats. If you had a good day or a bad day, just enjoy your outside and the journey. And if you're not racing for anything, it's like, why are you even putting that stress on yourself? And make it a happy place, right?
Absolutely. And that's kind of where my training stemmed from. And the weird thing is so after my bodybuilding show, gaining obviously 40 pounds was a huge mental issue, because I was like always shredded and people were looking at me and people knew me as the fitness person, right? And so you don't want to be a heavy fitness person. Like what, you're a nutritionist, you're a personal trainer, who's going to hire you when you are so big, And I would get all sorts of comments like, did you fall off the wagon? You must eat whatever you want. You must be binge eating. When in fact, I was actually eating not even enough, which was another whole learning experience with all this, right? But not eating enough and counting every single calorie and making sure that I logged how many calories were in every workout and like doing all this crazy extreme dieting crap. Even, and there was a period in the beginning where I kind of didn't do that because I knew my body needed time to recoup, but then that wasn't happening. And I started to get desperate and I started to like count every calorie and make sure that my meal plans were perfect every single day. And then I started cycling. I had reconstructive hip surgery because I have an anatomical defect in my hip. And my doctor was like, okay, well, I don't want you lifting weights, but you can get on your bicycle. And I was pretty used to riding my bicycle to work. That's something that I've done for a long time just to get some extra activity in. And I realized that I really liked riding my bike in the morning. It was great. The sun was coming up. Nobody is out. Like it's totally empty and quiet. And we live in this gorgeous area where you can go down and ride along the trail next to the lake. And it's just incredible. So, every morning I started doing this and I started noticing that, I moved to a ketogenic diet. That was another big move, right? But I moved to a ketogenic diet. I also started because I noticed my blood sugar fluctuations were crazy. So I was trying to help that.
Sorry to interrupt, but isn't that related to your stress level because cortisol increased blood?
Partially. Yeah, I think partially, but I also think a lot of it was my insulin sensitivity was pretty ruined through the bodybuilding diets that I was on. So I think that had really messed with a lot. So anyways, part of it was the cortisol, part of it was the crazy diets that I'd done and the crazy dieting I had done, because you kind of have to look at it through the lens of when I hit the stage, I would only be on like 600 calories, which was horrific. And I knew it was horrific, but my coach, who was this professional, gonna get me on the national stage, knew it all, right? So I was like, why would you hire a coach if you're gonna, why would you hire a coach if you're not going to listen? So I just kind of shut that part of my brain off. And so, lots of extreme dieting didn't really help that out either. And, extreme dieting can be super hard on your metabolism as well. So I moved to a low carb / ketogenic, lifestyle. And I was really able to reset my insulin sensitivity that way, which really, really helped me out because now I've worn a CGM pretty frequently and it's leveled completely out. So that was a great thing that I did, I think, in order to help my body out. now with that being said, when you are doing intense work, you do have to bring carbs in every once in a while if you're not training at the right heart rate zones. So I do incorporate carbs. However, I pretty much stay in ketosis most of the time. So I'm utilizing those carbs well. So, and the endurance scene is very new to me. So this is all a new fun thing. That's an experiment. So lots of testing glucose and ketones and experimenting on my own body. But I did really, really well with that. So, me just doing some low impact cycling and then bringing in the ketogenic diet, I started noticing that my heart rate variability was improving. I was feeling better. I was recovering from workouts, and I stopped counting calories because I was riding my bike so much. I was like, I don't need to be worrying about this. I'm riding, like, I got up to where I was riding like 200 miles a week.
Wow.
And yeah. And just around our lake here, we have hundreds of miles of just bicycle trails, and you can go forever. And the scenery is just divine. So 150, 200 miles a week. And I felt great. I was no longer counting calories, and I started to lose weight, even though I was eating a lot. So that was my first clue that when I stopped focusing so much on counting calories and like beating myself up in the gym every day to try to look a certain way, is when I started seeing results, when I started intuitively doing what my body was allowing me to do rather than forcing these workouts into my program that I was maybe too tired to do the next day, or, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally relate. And I know when I gained 30 pounds like overnight in my world, back when it happened to me, I was the same way. I felt embarrassed, and people thought I would just stop training and racing Ironmans and marathons, that I just started eating and sitting there. So no one ever said that to me. And I looked a lot worse in my head than I looked to, what people saw. It wasn't the same as what I saw. And I just felt like a fat, big couch potato. And it messes with your head and your confidence, and you get depressed and really just, irritable a little bit, because you're like, why do I look this way? I'm supposed to be this elite athlete and top trainer, and look at me now, I look horrible. And it is kind of, it's hard because it messes with your head. So depression isn't necessarily, to me, it wasn't part of having, chronic fatigue, adrenal mitochondria issues. It was because of self-esteem issues, I think, and feeling like everyone's talking about you. And so then I'm talking about it, making a big deal, saying, no, I have adrenal exhaustion. And then it was embarrassing because everyone was like, shush up, you look fine. So it is such a mind games we played in our own heads, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, the crazy thing is, everybody thinks that if they get to this small spot, like if they lose 20 or 50 or however many pounds, that they're going to be happy. And I can tell you, I have been the most shredded and amazing from not to not being. And I can tell you that when I was even shredded and amazing, like perfect, stage presence, bikini girl, I can tell you that I could pick apart every little thing in my body, and I would look at my backside and be like, oh, well, this needs to be improved, or that needs to be improved. So we are very self-critical and overly critical sometimes. And I think as our body changes, we don't give ourselves that grace to see what progress we have made, rather than focusing on, we focus on all the bad instead.
Well, I know yeah, I mean, took me years after I gained that weight, and my body's never been quite the same. And even say, like, it was 2012 Ironman, I was probably the most fit I've ever been at the end of that year, 2012. And I still was like, oh, my thighs are too big, because I always have big cycling legs. That's where I carry it, but that's just my body type. And I look back and like, God, why didn't I appreciate my arms and my back and my legs? I look at my picture finishing photos, like, why was I complaining? I look pretty good. But you never, ever think that until later on, like, damn, I wish I took advantage of that and appreciated it. Now it's like,
absolutely.
Okay, can I get there again?
I know. I agree with you. I look back at the pictures, even of check-ins when I was like, 20 weeks out, and I would be like, wow, I looked so good right there. What's going on? But, I've come to appreciate what I have, right? Like I've been in every size now. I can legitimately say I've been every size except for like 300 pounds, but I've been obese and I have been extremely thin and fit. And I can tell you that I feel the most comfortable where I am at right now because I know that where I'm at is healthy.
Yeah.
I know where I'm at is sustainable.
Yeah.
And I also know that my body is working really hard for me. And so if it is working and performing well with what I am doing and with how I look right now, then why do I need to worry about looking like some girl on a magazine cover? I don't need to, you know?
Well, and that girl on the magazine cover, was making herself certain size for that picture, and plus it was Photoshop. So you look at people going to Academy Awards or something, going down that runway, and then you see them normally in magazines, people, real actors.
Absolutely.
They don't look like that all the time. So they do it for a show, like your bodybuilder show. But I just want to say one thing before we go on to, you said thin and fit. And we have to remember those words as we, have body image issues in our world and self-esteem, that we don't think thin and fit is healthy. It's
absolutely, yeah,
healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually. But I think we get stuck in, as athletes and bodybuilders, endurance athletes, whatever sport, what do you say is, classified as fit, and
right,
longevity and sustainability, as you said. And it's something that doesn't break your body systems down. What you did to stay at that level, to do bodybuilding, and what I did to do 2-3 Ironmans a year, it's actually increasing your aging, speed of aging. And
absolutely. It's not healthy at all. And that's a common misnomer, right? Is people think that you're this healthy person. I know people that are really small and thin that are more unhealthy, me, myself included at one point, than when I was even larger. Yeah. So you can't really, and that's the other thing, right? And so here I placed this big thing on myself saying, oh, people aren't going to want to come to me as a trainer because I have gained all this weight, and they're going to be like, well, she doesn't know what she's doing. Look at her. Probably. And so that's a really hard thing. But I can tell you this, and I've talked about it on my podcast so many times. I know people that are far better athletes than myself that are built heavier than I am, and they perform amazing. And I wish that I could perform at their level. So we can't judge people by what we see. You just do not know what they're capable of.
Yeah. And I just want to, add into talking about athletes, and you're trying to do all this stuff. You also work full-time and you're a mother. So talk about how you juggle that and trying not to have too much stress in your life. And you have young children. How old are they?
So I have a 7-year-old and a 14-year-old. So
wait, how old are you?
That's all an interesting. I'm 35. But yeah, it's funny because I'm an early morning person. That was the only way I could start getting fitness back into my life. And when I started waking up early, it just kind of stuck. So now I don't set an alarm or anything. I wake up early. But, along with that, I did start working only part-time just recently and moved towards more full-time coaching, which has been an even harder balance, I think, than it was originally, because I was doing it for so long. I did better that way. I used to do a lot of my paperwork and stuff on my lunch break and things. And now that I'm with the kids a lot more, it's a lot. I don't want to be on my phone when I'm hanging out with them. So it's been a little bit more of a balance. I've had to set time in my schedule on Fridays to do client check-ins and take care of podcasting business and all of that. So it's been a little bit of a juggling act, kind of relearning my schedule. But as far as training and working out goes, I'm a morning person, especially in the summer. I love getting out with the sunrise, and that quiet peace in the morning is just, it's amazing. Like, even when I ride my bicycle to work, it's like, I feel so refreshed and awake when I get there. I'm not like snoozing through my work hour,
Yeah, I think it's learning what works for you to manage that stress. And especially this year of 2020, people with kids, extra stress. They're at home all the time doing school. And I know I have a client that I coach has 3 little kids and her husband works full time. I mean, just the stress that people have to manage is huge when you have your own job as well as trying to get self-care in. So you find working out in the morning before people are at work. How do you make sure you get enough sleep at night?
I go to bed super early. I'm in bed usually by 8:00 at night, which I think is great, right? Because kids need sleep. Like a lot of kids are getting now. And so we, at 7:00, we start to wind down at night, and then we read to the kids. And by about 7:30, we have them in bed. My son, obviously he's older. He's allowed to read until 9:00. But we read to everybody, we get them in bed, and we're usually in bed by 8 or 8:15 at the latest. So I pretty much at this point turn into a pumpkin after 8:00. I'm not a real good night person.
That's like me. I was thinking this morning, you can ask me, I can tell you what time it is based on when I start yawning. You don't even need to look at a watch. It's usually 8 p.m. I'm yawning. Weekdays, it might be like 7:00. I'm ready to go to bed, especially this time of year when the days are shorter and it's dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. I sleep a little bit more in the wintertime, as we should. But I appreciate that because I go crazy how many families go to bed so late and their young kids are staying up so late. And I mean, I understand it's a struggle because they normally would have sports late at night and they have homework and they can't fit it all in. But it's just like these kids are going to have stress issues, health issues. Crazy.
Absolutely. You're setting the stage for their circadian rhythm young, right? So if we've got their sleep schedules all messed up when they're young, I can only imagine what happens further on down the line in their life. And the same goes for nutrition, right? I mean, I'm sure you have clients that they eat clean themselves, but then their children don't eat well. And then they'll come to you and at least in my case, they'll be like, well, last night I ate a whole bunch of this or that, really bad stuff. And I'm like, well, why'd you do that? Well, because my kids have it in the closet for their lunches. And I'm like,
why are they having that?
Why do they have it for their lunches? Well, because they need stuff to snack on. And I'm like, okay, well, you're struggling with something now, right? That stemmed from eating like that. Why do you want to start your kids that way?
Yeah, I know. I just think usually when you work with a client, you have to work on the whole family because if they can't eat differently than the rest of the family, and you have to get everyone on board, especially if they have food allergies, sensitivities, because I run lab tests, and if they can't have any gluten and they're extremely intolerant to it, well, it's cross-reactive, and then probably the kids have sensitivities as well they don't know about. So I always have to, okay, if we're going to get you better, we got to work on your kids. And it's just amazing how many people feed their kids whatever. They don't realize, that's not real food, and it's okay because they're kids, but it does their health starts showing up later in life, what they're doing right now.
Right. And then also you were asking about other ways of stress management, right? Yeah. So there are other ways. I try to balance all of this out. We have like waking up first thing in the morning and looking at crazy news on our phone, or going to bed with that crazy.
Hold on. Your Wi-Fi is a little slow motion. So can you say that again? Are we back? Video is super slow.
Yep.
Is your Wi-Fi? Is it? There you go. So what was
your write down the time?
Hold on. You didn't hear any of that. So say it again.
I said, so when you wake up in the morning and you look at your phone and you're looking at the news and the stressful state of our country, or what's going on with all of this virus stuff, all of these things, or even looking at other people's bodies on social media.
I dropped the whole call. Hold on.
So when we wake up in the morning.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
When we wake up in the morning, we're being exposed to all this stress that we don't even know about. Like we pick up our phone and you have the news on there it's hardly ever positive, right?
No,
and you have depending on what you look at, you have other people's bodies. If you're scrolling through Instagram and you're trying to lose weight or something, and you've tagged something with some kind of weight loss, you're going to see other people's bodies there. And that automatically sets your brain off into the wrong direction and stuff. Also, I have started implementing like foam rolling after my workouts and no coffee. So I don't do caffeine pretty much at all anymore.
Nice.
But I don't do it first thing in the morning for sure, because that I think when your cortisol is already high from waking and stuff, I think adding a bunch of caffeine to it is probably not a great combination. Yeah. So I have pretty much completely eliminated caffeine. And I did that from the moment that I found out I was having adrenal problems. I actually didn't have any caffeine for a full year after that. So there's these little external things that we can start removing that are kind of burdening us without us even really thinking about it. And that's, so when I talk about diet a lot, it's not just our nutrition diet, it's the nutrition we're putting into our brain and the things that we're being exposed to from the outside. So we kind of have to make a choice to make the right decisions when it comes to the other things, the other stressors that we're exposing ourselves to.
Our environmental stressors and those triggers. Yeah, definitely setting the day up with a positive mindset is one of my mantras, and going to bed the same way, like setting up good sleep, not looking at email. I know when I used to run my fitness studio for 10 years that I closed last October, I would make sure I shut off email because I ruined my sleep if I had some stressful negative email before bed. I'd be like worrying about it if someone complained or something had a problem. And it's like, okay, that's the worst for your sleep, and especially not waking up and looking at email. So I would, not look at emails until I was sitting at my desk and ready to work, or after I had clients or somewhere I could focus on it, but just not starting my day with it. And getting that positive mindset, not watching the news. I try to read an online news and look at, more research articles than the media, because I find that you don't really get the full truth.
No.
So I stopped watching the news and TV news pretty much in June or before that. But yeah, I know it's just those environmental stressors. People don't realize all stress accumulates, and it's like you have a beaker of stress over your head and that cup gets full, and it's all stress accumulates from external and internal stressors that are chronic nonstop, and they accumulate and overfill that beaker of stress. And then we cause imbalance and dysfunction in our entire body and have this whole domino effect. And what we say in FDN is metabolic chaos is what is the result. We don't really know what one thing is. It's a multiple effect thing, and many root causes that throw you off into this broken, burned out, dysfunction state for a while. So that's
absolutely. So the more you can remove, the better. And that's kind of how I approach things is see how many of them I can get out so that I have more room to work out. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, as long as, exercise to me, it's like my place is to release stress. And, we work out in the morning and the sun's rising and there's nobody out, and, we're on a trail run this morning, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's just like one person I saw. No one's out in the morning. I don't want to tell people to go out because it's so nice. Like, oh, it's so peaceful and quiet. So it is, getting outside in nature is essential exercise, but also, that sunrise and getting out in the afternoon and just being more active throughout the day, I think is important, just as working out in the morning, but doing something, getting outside for a walk, or just being outside lunchtime and evening, watch the sunset, and, just spending more time in the outdoors, not necessarily exercising, but being outside, I think is so healthy for us.
Absolutely.
So, what do you do for your nutrition? You do nutrition now? After all this or before all this, you got a degree in nutrition, or what?
Yeah. So in the middle of it all, I started the process, and it was kind of slow at first because it was like, I was like, how am I going to do this? I'm bodybuilding. I am, raising kids and all this. So I just slowly worked on it and picked away at it. And I'm still continuing to do that, right? Like there's so many things I have on my list that I want to be involved with and learn from. And so I just kind of pick away at it. So I'm like, don't really want to pick up anybody that has issues of any kind. My biggest thing is I actually didn't even know that I was going to become a personal trainer. One of my coaches, my original coaches, she was like, you're so meticulous about form and you're so encouraging to the team. And, she would go on these trips and she would have me help everybody with their posing and help them with all these things. And she's like, you're so good at communicating with people and you want to help people. And she's like, you really need to become a personal trainer. I was like, no, that's not for me. No, not way. And so anyway, she ended up inspiring me to go for it. And at that point, I ended up getting my personal training license. And I was like, I could train a couple people here and there. And I started training people, and then I found it really rewarding. And so now I really love to train people. So, I kind of found myself through that. And, what better way to complement that than helping people understand the food that they're putting in their mouth?
Mm-hmm. Good. That's great. And then I know you have your podcast. Let's tell people where to listen to you to learn more.
So I am the Fit Farming Food Mom. I'm available on every podcast platform. I've had some really wonderful guests on there, including yourself. And I started that kind of because the same kind of thing, like I wanted to reach people and be able to help them, but I didn't know how to get that out there. And nobody's going to sit and listen to me, I thought, right? So I started typing up all these blogs. Well, in the process of that, blogs have become super popular, I guess I would say. And then I realized that blogs are a lot of work, holy smokes, and you got to write it. And the best time I write is when I'm doing cardio, actually. And so when I used to do contest prep cardio, I would write a lot, but that's when I realized I had all these thoughts and things that I wanted to share with other people. And I wanted to get other people's opinions on and all these things. And so I started this podcast, and it was just kind of, at first I was like, this is not going to go anywhere. And it kind of blew up. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the people I get to meet with it. And it's just been a really great experience.
Now, do you farm then? Is that what you're saying? Fit farming?
Yeah, so we live on a hobby farm. As we were talking off camera before we started recording, I was like, so I have a duck next to me right now that got injured that we're taking care of, and so my office has turned into sheer mayhem. I've got kids' paperwork everywhere because they're homeschooling because of all the COVID shutdowns and stuff, and then I've got a duck in here, and so there's feathers flying around. And it's kind of frustrating because I remodeled this office to be like my little Zen place, and it's kind of sheer chaos, but that's kind of how life is, right?
I was going to say
through those moments.
Everyone's life is like that this year. I think it's when you have kids, especially. Tough,
absolutely. So yeah, we do live on a hobby farm. We have chickens and ducks and horses, and I have a huge garden every year. And so yeah, I just try to have my kids be experienced with how things grow and what life looks like, with the animals, and, connecting with something that's human rather than an electronic, I think is a really important puzzle, piece in their life. This summer, my daughter, we actually raised a huge flower garden, and she sold bouquets all year to people. And, it kind of gave her that little bit of entrepreneurial spirit. She bought herself a brand new bicycle, and, it just teaches them great lessons they would never learn otherwise. So it's a lot of work, but I stick with it because I think it's great for everybody.
Yeah. My husband grew up in, I think, more high school years and teenage years on a hobby farm. His family did. So his dad was a banker that had the kids live outside of Portland, Oregon and Canby, Oregon. They had animals, didn't know what they're doing. And he's Mr. 4-H. And
that's awesome.
Every year. So we always laugh about that. We just moved, from Seattle to San Diego. So we went through all these trophies that he ended up throwing away, but he was
that's the funny thing. Is when I was young, I did all that 4-H and stuff. So I wanted my kids to experience it. And my husband is like not an animal person at all. So then we land at this piece of property that we buy, and all this stuff starts going up, and he's like overwhelmed. Right. And it's kind of funny because I was joking. I was like, well, I was the champion chicken showman when I was a kid. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And I go down and I get the trophy out, and they make so much fun of me over all that stuff. It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, that's what Neil did. But now we have a huge yard that we are, it's weekends. It's my first time ever enjoying gardening because it's our house that we're new kind of garden we can create and feel like it's your own. But it's so interesting how you do start to enjoy it and it's therapeutic, and can, especially weekends right now when you're more time at home, that you just like, oh, this is something I want to work on every weekend. And then we can grow fruit and vegetables and see these flowers. So it is kind of fun. I'd love that you have your kids do that though. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely rewarding.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. I think it's really inspirational for others to hear other people's stories similar to myself that are ambitious, high-performing athletes of all levels, and that the struggle is real and you don't have to struggle alone. And it is a journey. You have to just start that journey and learn what you can do to become your best self and how to get the right tools by identifying your external stresses, chronic stress, and your internal hidden stressors. So it's really working on the whole you, as I say, with the holistic method, to really become your best version of you. And hopefully people strive to do that in the new year as we start here in January 2021.
Yeah, crazy. But it's going to be a good year. I just know it. I'm putting those positive vibes out right now.
We all need to do that.
Well, one thing we need to remember is we can't control what happens around us, but we can control what we take in. So we need to make that a priority.
I know. And I want to go to Disneyland. We're only 2 hours away. And I'm like, can we just get on with it? I want to go to Disneyland.
Me too. I'll join you guys.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.